Arthur, first speech of the play.
Yeah, a famous one.
Rather a famous one.
Yep.
What I thought we'd do, let's just read it through, stop as we go, unpick anything, and just see if we can note any of the clues that Shakespeare may have given us in terms of how to make the audience listen to it. Starting with that great first word.
Okay, yeah. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by this son of York.
Okay, well we get the winter and the summer bit, and there's a pun there with this son of York. Just remind us who this son of York is.
So the son of York, Richard is a son of York, but I think in this context, this is Edward, his brother, who is the new king following the recent war, which has just ended. So this winter of discontent, this bad time, now made a great time.
Yeah, so it's a great kind of.
So,
I love just the word about that word now. I think it's Shakespeare's favourite word. It's sort of, it's not just this is what's happening now. It sort of takes you right now. So it's now in Richard's time, but it's now on stage, and that's what's going to happen.
It sharpens the focus immediately, doesn't it?
Does.
We're here right now.
And it asks the audience to be complicit in a way. It sort of says, we're at the same point. This isn't 14, whatever it is.
It's us in this room
80s,
right now. Okay. And all the clouds that lowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried.
Okay, so that's like those first four lines have kind of set out our stool, haven't they? They've given us a sense of where we are.
Yeah.
Lowering, clouds lowering, I think that means sort of glowering in a way. Sort of.
It's quite, like the sour, it's something...
Looming,
yeah.
And our house being the House of York. And you, as you say, you're a brother of that house.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another now.
Now are our brows bound with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our stern alarums changed to merry meetings, our dreadful marches to delightful measures.
Okay, so I'm getting the sense that everything's okay.
There's a lot of transference, isn't there, of this has become this.
Yeah.
As winter becomes summer,
Yeah.
bruised arms become monuments, alarums, meetings, marches, measures.
I detect something that's crept in, which is alliteration. In other words, where the words start with the same letter or the same sound. Suddenly there's merry meetings and marches and measures and
monuments,
dreadful marches and delightful measures. So there's an element of consciousness about the effect he's having. And I begin to think he's maybe not, there's an element of maybe of cynicism potentially with that alliteration. Do you find that?
Yes, I think it's quite considered, isn't it? Quite a considered, which could be undermining the sincerity of what we're hearing.
Yeah, I mean it's so chosen, if you like. Dreadful marches, delightful measures. It's so deliberate.
Grim-visaged war hath smoothed his wrinkled front, and now again, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute.
So that's our third sentence. It's a little bit longer, this one. And he's personified war as being this great grim-visaged
being. This wrinkled front. I don't know is that old or is that anger or is it something screwed in?
The brow is frowning brow or something. mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of, a bit of more alliteration, fright the souls of fearful adversaries. And then we get, it sounds to me that even in the sound difference between now, mounting, souls, adversaries, we get something that's more light, more staccato, more... all those L's, ladies, lascivious, and
even nimbly.
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 Yeah, L,
something quite, yes.
Pleasing, lots of L's. And what's the effect, do you think, of that? What does that give you as an actor to play?
You can just, with that juxtaposition between the two, there's something, it's careering from one to the other, and you can really, I think, enjoy those Fs, those Ds when it's hard, and then enjoy the lightness. There's something which is switching back and forth, which is it's a little unnerving, I think. It's something not, you can't quite put your finger on what he's going for.
Yeah, so but I begin to wonder whether everything's okay.
yeah, exactly.
There's something, I'm not sure that his preference is not for grim-visaged war and barbed steeds and bruised arms, because lascivious, capering and ladies and lascivious starts to inform a sort of attitude in Richard.
There's I think certainly with lascivious is not necessarily a nice word to describe something. Oh, it's changed from this to this. It's a bit judgmental.
Yeah.
There's some judgment in it, I think.
I think that's right. And lascivious meaning sort of
oversexed, yeah.
It's got a crude connotation rather than the delightful pleasing of elite. It's gone from delightful measures to
lascivious pleasings.
Yeah. So then we get a shift, don't we? So we've had three sentences in, and then he's suddenly going, but, carry on with that.
But I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking-glass, I, that am rudely stamped, and want love's majesty to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, I, that am curtailed of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at me as I halt by them, why, I, in this weak piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time, unless to see my shadow in the sun and descant on mine own deformity.
Well, that's a long sentence. That's a long sentence.
Yeah.
What do you think Shakespeare's getting at? Why suddenly, after something that's quite, 4 lines to begin with, another 4 lines, maybe 5 lines, and then suddenly this great tumble.
It's like there's something measured, there's something that's been coming along, and then there's this spill.
Yeah.
There's something that's been pent up.
Yeah.
And just even reading it, just taking it off the page then, the lack of a full stop, which you don't find for how many lines is it? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's about, is it 14?
Something like that,
Which is,
14 lines, yeah.
That's a lot. That's a long, that's a long time to speak, to get something out. The length of that thought is quite.
It's
powerful.
as if he's sort of, it's as if he's got so much to say, it all comes tumbling out. And it seems to also noting the repetition, I really heard it that time, the repetition of I, why I.
Dogs bark at me as I, why I, yeah. And up until that point, we haven't heard a single I.
No.
We've had our, we've had...
several times, yeah.
Yes, it's all our, it's collective, but we've moved from, if he's talking about us as a collective, we are now just on
we're now dealing
individual, and it's all tumbling out.
with. Yeah, but this is what I think. Okay.
Yeah.
And some of the language too is it's like they're sort of euphemisms, aren't they? They seem to be sort of where a euphemism, being a substitute phrase for something that perhaps is in reality harder. When he says, "I'm not shaped for sportive tricks," there's a what's he talking about? Women don't fancy me, I guess.
Well, if everything that's been described before, we could take that there. Obviously, that's the sportive tricks. It's these good times, these oversexed, goings on.
Yeah.
And it is that but turns the whole context of what we've just.
It's a real pivot
before.
To the scene,
real like.
a gear
but
change.
hold on a minute.
Yeah. So in a way, there's a kind of accumulation of his own self-description of, I am not shaped for sportive tricks, I'm not made to court an amorous looking glass. And then he gets into more detail. I that am rudely stamped. It's like he's searching for what the right phrase is, or, as you pointed out, I think, repeating some of the things that he's been called.
Yeah, it does. Certainly, it reads like a list, doesn't it? There is a.
Yeah.
It's like he'll give one, and then go. Oh, do you know? Actually, I've heard a better one.
Yes, not enough.
Oh, actually, no. I actually got called an even better one.
Yes.
There's something in and I think with the length of the thought and the way it builds.
Yes.
Like that, it does, and it's. I always find, certainly with acting Shakespeare, that it's every thought you have is better than the previous one. So if that's true,
yes.
with this, it's like, oh, I can top that. There's a delight in getting caught up in that rhythm of the length of the thought and finding the one that's really gonna shock you as the audience.
Yes. And they building length to they're not the same length items, curtailed of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, let's call a spade, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time.
And then there's one comma in the break there for that, sent before my time into this breathing world, scarce half made up, and that so lamely and unfashionable the dogs bark at me as I halt by them. It's like, just even saying it, I can feel my
running out of breath.
It's something squeezing it out, it's quite a nice image, that of just every last bit just come out so you can get it.
Yes. And it's like saying I can't. And this is a detail that I must remember to tell you.
Yeah. Word
dogs
for word.
bark at me, which is also quite funny. I wonder whether there's any element of self-deprecation in that dogs bark at me as I hold by them.
It's quite an absurd image, isn't it? It's quite dark.
Yes. And the fact that he says, and I've been made up so unfashionably, it's a very strange word to say that my body is unfashionable. But it sort of also is an indictment of the priorities of that society.
Exactly. If you're fashionable, you're of now. You're of the time, aren't you? You're current and you're popular.
Yeah.
Well, this is. I am just not. I'm not made for now.
Yes.
I'm not made for these people.
And then there's another shift, it seems to me, when he says, "Why I?" Which is not meant to be why I. Why I?
Yes.
It's as if he's almost aware that he's gone down a bit of a rabbit hole, and then is reasserting what he's trying to talk about. This time isn't my time. I was more suited to bruised arms and barbed steeds. Just read it again, just that last part of that sentence from Why I.
Why I, in this weak, piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time, unless to see my shadow in the sun and descant on mine own deformity.
It's an interesting sort of conclusion to that section of the speech, isn't it?
That's that slight break, which just gives, it's like a moment of just for a real breath,
Yeah.
I guess. After
Yeah.
of a real collecting of. It's almost just grabbing the
Pull
reins a
myself back
bit. Yeah,
together.
it's run away a bit with me. I've spent all my breath.
Yes.
Let me kind of just put it to a more clarity for you.
And then there's no euphemism. There's no circumlocution. There's no talking around the concept. He describes what he's just described as this glorious summer. He is now describing it as this weak, piping time of peace. Another lovely bit of alliteration between piping and peace, and pass away the time. But there's something disdainful about that. Something piping sounds very thin, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And it's not the great trumpet roars that he's once on the battlefield.
Yeah, it's something more pathetic and the disdain for it is quite palpable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And a waste of time. This pass away the time.
Yeah.
You know, this. He's got, and I think it's certainly with all this kind of, you know, his grasp of now.
Yes.
And wasting time. You know, we should be. I don't know. It suggests we are wasting time here. Everything is a waste of time in what.
And for him, there's no job for him to do. And then he, again, a bit of self-deprecation or a bit of a sort of absurdity about all I can do is look at my shadow in the sun and moan about it.
Yeah.
So then we get to another gear change, don't we? So, okay, that's the situation.
Yeah.
Very clear.
Yeah.
Sorted out. Realize that he's getting a bit upset about it, or that somehow the language suggests that he is only barely in control, it feels to me, of what he's, of some kind of well of anger, hatred, something that's going on underneath. But he does feel as though he then pulls it together, doesn't he? And therefore, so what's he going to do? Let's read it from and therefore.
And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these fair, well-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain and hate the idle pleasures of these days.
That's fairly straight. That's quite a bold statement of intent, isn't it?
And it's quite active.
Yes.
If everything has been kind of describing the situation, the current situation, it's now, I'm not just your narrator on the side.
Yeah.
I am going to be doing something.
Yeah, and what do you think what does the effect of the soliloquy of a man coming onto a stage and talking to the audience, how are we meant to react to it as the audience?
It's strange because it takes breaking that fourth wall immediately.
Yeah.
I think immediately sets you apart from everyone else on stage.
Yeah.
You exist in this different world.
Yeah.
The world of where we as the audience are sitting.
Yeah.
And so you have that common relationship immediately.
Yeah.
And if you're just talking and no one else can hear you, even if they are on stage or if they're not, you have that immediately. But then if this then goes, but I am going to be in this world as well.
Yes.
Then I think as the audience, you have the dramatic irony of being like, okay, well, here we go, like into it instead of, and I think that this kind of, you know, as he takes control again of his emotions.
Yes.
I feel like we've gone through we started as quite a benevolent narrator with a slight edge into this angry, deep, you know, this deep anger and twisted names and stuff that's all come out into, but let's now go into the world and I'm going to use everything that you've just learnt about me to affect what's going to be happening.
He's making us complicit in a way, isn't he? Because we don't shout out, oh no,
Don't do that.
Don't go that route,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
We've kind of, and there's something so exposing and honest, it feels, about, you know, letting your emotions out this quickly. That, yeah, we kind of, I think we're kind of, there's a strange kinship that you've got when someone's shared that much with you so early on. That
and been, I don't think anybody ever lies in a soliloquy or an aside to an audience in Shakespeare. So this is him telling us his truth, which I think is very powerful, quite powerful. And as you were saying, you know, I can't think of another Shakespeare play, of course I immediately will, other than when they start with a chorus. I can't think of another play that starts with a single person coming on and saying, see this play from my point of view. Like,
I think you're right. Yeah, to begin with that individual outlook.
Yes,
it's very much, here's my.
Yeah.
We start with Richard's kind of lens on things. It seems.
Well, let's just finish off because he's now going to tell us what he's going to do.
Yeah.
This is not, in a way, in terms of picking out the text, not as significant for this exercise. But let's just finish this. It plays off.
Plots have I laid, inductions dangerous, by drunken prophecies, libels, and dreams, to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hate the one against the other. And if King Edward be as true and just as I am subtle, false, and treacherous, this day should Clarence closely be mewed up about a prophecy which says that G of Edward's heirs the murderer shall be. Dive, thoughts, down to my soul, here Clarence comes.
So what it does do in that last line, dive thoughts down to my soul, is it suggests that he's going to put on a front. That's how he's going to do it. He's going to play act and not reveal the thoughts that he has just revealed to us to anybody else.
And I think just this whole speech does suggest a real energy.
Yes.
With that big long thought, that with the list of names that we come through, there is an energy in him, and there's something pushing forward. It's not necessarily a positive energy,
no,
but it's something that is quite attractive.
It is, yeah. I was just thinking the same thing. That there's something impressive about talking in full sentences in itself, and that those sentences build, and we, the audience, get carried along on what is a sort of wave. We may kind of go, I'm not sure I want to be on this wave with this man, but well, look, let's just recapping then. We have the sentence structure itself gives us something. It lays out the story very clearly at the start with those now, and now. So we get where we are. We then get his own take on how he fits into that world with that, as you say, extraordinarily long, cumulative sentence that builds and builds and builds until repeating the word deformity. And this is what I'm going to do about it.